I do that too. Yeah, keep it up. My daughter's 13. There's no way we're getting pigtails back down. There we go.
I'm gonna do it while she lets me do her hair still.
There you go. Exactly.
That's right. And we're almost there. She's like, I want it down. Yeah, but you're too. So.
There comes the day.
Then it comes quick.
Yes. Get those hair bows in while you can. Right. With the bow head all the time.
She won't let me get those anymore.
She won't already?
Yeah.
Give her space for a minute. Maybe if it has the right color or glitter or something.
I didn't try glitter.
I really
I didn't try glitter.
Yeah, she's blinging, so maybe
They do like that.
maybe if she picks it out.
They're still in
Oh, I didn't know that.
and
That's right.
Makes a difference.
That way everybody knows she's wearing it well.
That's right.
Yeah, and then if she gets really like, I don't want what mommy wants, just tell her you don't like the one that you want her to get, and she might get it.
Emily decided
Hello, how are y'all? Good, how are you?
to homeschool
Oh, I'm done.
and so she has had a period.
Hey, good morning.
I introduced myself to the board. Isn't she wonderful? I saw her a while ago. I just saw her a while ago. She's got some good. She's got good bodies. Yes, exactly. She having a good year. And she had the sweetest way to share. About a billion.
I love to go to your visit. Let's go to your
But see, I don't really
Good. That's the way I want
kids,
my
if they want
grandchildren.
to stand up, they're fidgety or they want to stand up in class, I have no problem with
with
it.
that.
You know, they're not going to be in
The
the front.
mothers do.
And then my other rule is go to sleep at
Tell me again who
I
comes
don't know, like I give you a warning, and then if you sleep again, so you get one warning, and then, but for the rest of the year, if you sleep.
Oh, okay, yes, okay, right, yes, yes.
And that's what I did at the public school too.
Oh,
And those kids were way different than where I was when I went. They couldn't sleep. I mean, they would stand up. They stand up. They stay awake.
that's right. Oh, she's great as for friends. See, that's everything. Melts a mother's heart to know she's fine, she's safe. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Distraction. You know what I mean? Distraction. Yeah.
Oh, it's okay. Okay, first year.
Yeah.
She was brand new. Really well. She's adjusted. She's very smart. Very smart. Very smart. That's great. Is she taking advanced courses? She does have the gift of writing. No.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Come on, it's middle school. We get excited in middle school, folks. It's good to have you guys here this morning. First of all, what I'd like to do is I'd like to welcome all of our online visitors. We've got several online guests. It's good to have you. My name is Craig Konchak. I'm the middle school principal. I've got the good fortune of spending time with your young people on a regular basis. And I've got an amazing team, which I'm going to be introducing to you here today, and excited about that. But there's a couple other people that I want to mention. First and foremost, my administrative assistant, Gina Piepmeyer, who's standing right behind me. Sorry that you guys on camera can't see her, but she is the brains of the outfit, and she keeps us all organized and whatnot. So thank you, Miss Gina, for getting us ready this morning. The other person I'd like to introduce to you, if you haven't met him yet, his name is Dr. Chip Houston, and he's sitting right here on the right side. He's trying to keep it balanced back there. But I'm super excited about Chip. He brings so much to the table, brings so much to North Cobb Christian, exactly what Mr. Klingman needed as it relates to someone who could help him to catch the things that tend to fall off his plate, and for him to be able to encourage teachers and faculty. I'm really excited about what he's bringing to the table relative to that. So if you haven't had a chance to meet him, please make a point of doing that today. So why don't we open up in prayer, and then we'll get started this morning. A lot of content to move through. Heavenly Father, we love you, and we thank you for this opportunity to describe the middle school journey, the middle school adventure, as it starts here in 5th grade. I'm thankful for all of those that are online, Lord, and all of those that are present. And I pray that nothing would be hidden. Father, that we would see your fingerprints all over this slideshow and all over the content within it. I pray, Father, for these kiddos that are coming up out of 4th grade, that you'd help them to finish their school year strong, and that their hearts and minds would be prepared for the journey ahead in 5th grade. Father, I pray that you give these parents Solomon's wisdom as they guide and direct them in everything that they do. We're so thankful for this partnership, Lord, in this school, North Cobb Christian, where we cultivate hearts, Father. That's one of the most important aspects of what we do here, to cultivate hearts, challenge minds, and impact culture. So, Father, in all of this, we ask for your protection and your guidance. We don't take this lightly. It's in Jesus' name we pray. And all God's people said? Amen. Amen. You know, it's funny because I just make that analogy. I think of scripture where it talks about in Luke chapter 17, verse 2. It says, it's better for you to take a millstone and tie it around your neck and cast yourself into the sea than to bring harm to these little ones. And I want you to know how much we consider this as the highest honor to work with your young people. My journey is a unique one. It wasn't in education to begin with. My journey was as a counselor, and my heart is as a counselor. Maybe that's one of the reasons why I'm uniquely prepared for middle school, to help guide them and direct them through different circumstances and situations that they may face. I got my bachelor's degree in psychology, and I minored in youth ministry. But then I got a master's in counseling, but then I went right into getting my licensure. So I'm a licensed professional counselor, both here in Georgia as well as the state of Florida. The school that I was at previous to coming to North Cobb Christian was in South Florida, and I was there for about 18 years, and I wore just about every hat imaginable. I was the coach, I was the counselor, I was the dean, the director of student development, the director of development, the interim head of school for a period of time. So I had an opportunity to understand what makes a system special, a system that works special. Your experience is only with lower school thus far. And so basically all you can do, unless you have any students that have already come through the middle school program or are getting ready to graduate, which I see one of us in the room is, you understand the importance of a system that's cohesive, a system that works. And the analogy that I like to give is the analogy of the gears in a clock. The gears in a clock are important primarily because they have teeth. Imagine if they didn't have teeth, then they'd just be spinning in circles, right? So one of the things that I think makes North Cobb Christian School unique and special is the fact that in lower school, in middle school, in upper school, we're connected. And we've got good leadership that strives to make sure that we're connected on a regular basis and that we're communicating on a regular basis. Just last night, Megan Strange sent out an invite to both Wendy and myself for lunch. On a regular basis, we try to go out to lunch monthly. And most of that's just so that we can talk about Todd. But don't tell him I just told you. So, now, actually, those are important times for us to spend so that we can remain connected, so that when you guys make that journey from lower school to middle school, that you can see that there's similarities. There's some differences, and you're going to notice those right off the bat, but there's some similarities. And the same is from the journey from middle school to upper school. So it's an exciting place, and it's an exciting journey and opportunity that we have here. Now, one of the things that I wanted to mention as we kind of kick this off is I want to describe and I don't like to be just standing behind the podium, but I know I need to do that for those at home, or else I'll be off screen. One of the most important things in the middle school is our theme. And when I came in to the middle school, I knew that we needed to come up with something that basically stated who we are and what we did. And that is this verse here in Proverbs chapter 4, verse 23. It says, above all else, guard your heart, for everything that you do flows from it. And ladies and gentlemen, you don't know me, and some of you may, but what I want you to know about me is that, and you can't either, but we can't compete with social media. We can't compete with the internet. We can't compete with what our young people are exposed to on a daily basis. It's impossible. They're immersed in the culture that they're immersed in, and we do the best that we can. But what I can tell you we can do, and what we do well, is we can help them to guard their heart. If we can help them put on the lenses that allow them to see through a biblical worldview where they're at and what they're doing, then we have to believe that we're doing the right thing. And that's what this is all about, giving them the lenses so that they can see the world and that they can interact with it. So super excited about that. That's the theme of the middle school. There are two questions in middle school that we ask. Number one is, what are we building? And number two is, what tools do we use? It's a process. And we were at a sports banquet last night for football. Believe it or not, football happened in the fall, and we're just now having this. And primarily it's because the coach wants to use this as a launching pad for something else. This is a process, and that's what he kept saying to the boys. You guys got to trust the process. You got to trust the process. And as I'm dropping my son off this morning at 6:15, I'm reminding myself, Dad, you got to trust the process, right? And it's so exciting to see the products, because we know that that's what the process leads to. The process leads to the product. And so super excited about this, what we're building here. And what we're building, when you ask that question, what are we building? We're building their gifts. And when you ask, well, what are these gifts? We're building their unique genius. We believe that every young person is wired differently. That they're concrete thinkers, let's call them. Okay? They do what you tell them to because your dad or your mom or you're whoever you are, and you're making up the rules and you're telling them what to do. But we realize that all of a sudden when they start back-talking and they start questioning and they start, well, you know why? That's because they're becoming abstract thinkers. That's just the short and fat of it. And at the end of the day, we've got to help them to navigate that transition. Okay? And for some, it's easier than others. Let's just put it that way. And the first step, or the G in this acronym of gifts, is grit. And grit is something that is a lost art today. And for those of you that are at home that are watching, and those of you that are here in the room, grit is something that we're losing in this country. It's the toughness. It's the ability that once you get knocked down, to get back up. And they're going to receive that in all of their classrooms, and they're going to receive that on their athletic fields, and they're going to receive that in the arts with their respective fine arts classes. But grit is toughness. I see some of you are taking notes. Take this note down. There's a book out by Angela Duckworth called Grit. And if you haven't taken the time to read it, it's really awesome. And what she identifies is that students, in particular, those that are trying to come into West Point Military Academy, what was it that sets them apart? What helps them to be successful? And what it was that helps them to be successful is not emotional intelligence. It's not their IQ. At the end of the day, it's grit. It's toughness. The ability to get up when you get knocked down. And I'm going to ask you in advance, if there's anything that you partner with us in, will you please partner with us in that? Will you please help to create an environment where we can allow them to, when they get knocked down, to get back up on their own? That's such an important part of the middle school process. That's going to be tough because a lot of times, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I took my son, my oldest son, Blake, we went to get his driver's license test this past Friday. And I'm sitting in the front seat. They don't sit with you anymore, primarily because of what we're dealing with COVID. I'm sitting in the front seat, and I'm so inclined every time he's doing the slightest thing wrong to say, cut the wheel. You know, as we're doing the parallel parking and all these things, I'm just so inclined to jump in. Well, that's one of the things that we're going to have to work together on. We need them to learn. We need them to stick it out and to continue to wrestle. I think that's probably the most important part of growing up, those wrestling matches that you have with yourself, right? Because their biggest enemy as they start to become those abstract thinkers is the way that they think themselves. And so much of that has to do with those external messages that are coming, right? Through the internet and through social media. You know, it was Teddy Roosevelt that said, comparison is the thief of joy. In middle school, even in lower school, right? Upper school, you name it. That's what they're doing right now. That's one of the reasons why, personally, I'm not a fan of social media. Because there's so much comparison that happens. And maybe that has to do with the individual. Maybe I know myself better than that. And that's probably one of the things. But grit's an important aspect of that. The next one, identity. Identity is middle school, right? The forming of identity. This is the easiest visual that I can present to you. This comes out of Tim Elmore's Habitudes book. He's got a series called Habitudes, which we've gone through in middle school. When I saw this, I wanted to steal it because it's so awesome. First, there is the image that others have of us. How they think we look. How they think, how smart we are. How they feel about us based on what they know. Then there's the image that we project to other people. Think about social media again. That's a perfect example. What images are, what better platform to on a regular basis communicate who they are? Then there's the image that we have of ourselves, which is shaped by the image that others have of us, by the image that we project to others. There's the image that we have of ourselves. But then there's the identity, or there's the image that is true. Can I tell you today that the most important element in middle school is that we want them to have a true identity. When they look in the mirror, we want them to love who they see because they're a creation of God. I tell them all the time in chapel, I say, stand up, and they all stand up. And I said, repeat after me. I am special. Go ahead, parents, join me. A creation of God. I am special because God don't make junk. We make junk, but God don't, right? So identity is such an important element of middle school journey. Fitness. John Rady wrote a book called Spark. That's another great resource for you parents. And it shows the direct correlation between brain growth and development and physical exercise. And so physical fitness is an important element for us. We want to make sure that they're getting playing. That's one of the reasons why they have at least 3 days of PE when they come in into the middle school program. And that's a really important element for us. And I definitely would recommend that you read that. It's just that exercise creates this environment in which the brain is ready, willing, and able to learn. You can think of it yourself. I mean, probably many in this room have done that New Year's resolution where you come to the conclusion, I'm going to do this, and you start exercising, you just feel better. You just feel more with it. And I think that's such an important element of why we do that. and why we even continue to allow recess in 5th grade. So for those of you that came in today just to figure that out, there you go. That's the first little nugget you can take away with you. We still do recess. How about that? Talent discovery. We believe every kid's got a unique talent and ability. Such an important part of what we do is helping them not to just take that surface talent and utilize that, but an important element of this is just to help them to discover those hidden talents. So many of our kids have commented on statements that teachers have made to them about something that they're good at that they didn't know that they were good at. I mean, even those people that are in the room today may consider the comment that an adult made to you guys many years ago that sent you in the path and the course for your life that you're taking. So talent discovery is a huge element, and we give kids an opportunity to participate in different activities that would allow them to exhibit those talents. I mean, just the fact that in chapel, we allow some of our students to lead our worship. What school do you know that the students are actually leading the worship? I think that's a pretty cool example of them doing that. The next one and last one in our GIFTS acronym is spiritual formation. We are his workmanship, the potter and the clay. We think about those visuals when we think about spiritual formation. It's funny because I very clearly communicate to students. I use my phone a lot to do that, but I say, let this hand represent God, let this hand represent man. There's one thing that separates us, and let this phone represent sin. And it's sin. And Jesus sent his son, or God sent his son Jesus to die on the cross for our sins. So when he removes that, we can have that relationship. There is nothing more important. It's important to have head knowledge. It's important to know Scripture. But if you don't have the ability to apply it, then all that head knowledge is for naught. Head, hands, heart. When you ask yourself, well, I wonder what the Bible program is like at Norcross Christian Middle School. The Bible program is one where I expect the teachers to ask important questions like this. We talk today about this principle, or we talk today about this particular attribute. But how can you apply that to your life when you leave here? Because if you can't use it, then why know it? And I think that seeps into every corner of our educational process here. If ever a student goes to a teacher and asks them, why are we doing this? My expectation of our teachers is that they'll tell them, not just because you have to know, but why. They need to know the why. I think that's important. Now, sometimes we don't need to belabor the why, but we do need to give those good examples of why they need to understand that. So that's it. That's what are we building? We're building their gifts. The next question, what tools do we use? And this is a much faster answer. We use academics, athletics, fine arts, and student life. Those are the 4 buckets. You guys have heard that. Those of you that have been around here for a long time, you already understand that. Those are the 4 buckets that we use to do that. I want to introduce our leadership team a little bit. A few of them are here. First of all, Aaron Williams is our Director of Student Development. Aaron, if you just turn around and let them see your face, appreciate it. And then basically Aaron he calls himself the Dean of Students. I said, don't call yourself the Dean of Students. You're not the Dean. You're the Director of Student Development. What is that? That's the Dean of Students, basically. It's basically someone that can help young people navigate making good choices and facing poor choices honestly, right? That's it. And so that's what he does in addition to building relationships. Now, Aaron does a lot more than that. We all wear a lot of hats in the middle school, but really excited about what he does for our middle schoolers. The next person, Miss Carrie Nickel, and Carrie is our middle school counselor. Thankful for Carrie. Carrie, this is her first year with us here at Norcross Christian, although her daughter was here this past year. Super excited about the knowledge that she brings. Most importantly, the sensitivity, the tenderness that some of our young people need to help navigate real tough situations. This is a tough place, and I'm really proud. In addition to being the middle school principal, I'm really proud to be the director of the counseling program because it allows me to work with my counselors at every level. We've got lower school counselors, middle school counselors, and upper school counselors. And we deal with everything from divorce to bereavement to suicidal ideation. We're dealing with anger management. We're dealing with anxiety, just a multiplicity of different things. And one of the things I want to say about that, and I'm not going to steal any of Carrie's thunder, but I appreciate the fact that any of our families that are navigating a circumstance or an issue that's difficult. Just this past yesterday, I was informed that one of our students in middle school and upper school as well, brother, sister, had lost a family member. And it was a heavy situation, just the way it all played out. And the parent asked, Mr. Konchak, do you have any counseling resources or references? And I was able to send an email with a complete listing of Christian counselors that can help, and Christian psychiatrists that really are going to take into consideration what does it mean to divvy out and dole out psychotropic medication and things like that as our kids try to grow up in this new normal, right? So all of those things, but this is basically a listing of our leadership team. I don't know that Matthew is here. He popped in just for a second. He's our director of the Fine Arts Program, and it's his office right around the corner. I'll let you meet some of my teachers, but before I do that, some of the middle school academic highlights I wanted to dive into, if we could do that for a second. The core classes, math, science, language arts, history, Bible, none of those have changed. I know these are similar to what you have in the lower school program. None of those have changed. Maybe the approach has changed a little bit. Basically, consider it this way. Instead of having one teacher that teaches all those courses, we have 3 different teachers that help us with our core classes. So for example, Zach Edwards teaches math and science, where Margie will teach Bible, and then Cheryl will teach history and language arts. And that kind of gives the kiddos a break in between. They have that 5-minute locker break, which they love and are excited about. Our advanced courses, we do offer advanced courses in math in 5th through 8th grade, but it's really not until 8th grade that we see a majority of those advanced courses kicking in. Some people would say, well, why not in other classes? Well, because when you bought into North Cobb Christian, you bought into advanced curriculum. And I think that's one of the things that you'll appreciate more as you guys dive into that. We do have foreign language in 5th grade. So for example, if I could describe it as kind of 5 days, of those 5 days, 3 will be PE, 1 will be a foreign language, and another will be a tech class. Okay, so that's what that's how we kind of spread out that element of specials. That'd be the easiest way for me to describe that. In addition to that, of course, they can have their fine arts, chorus, band, orchestra, visual arts in 5th through 6th grade. Once we get into 7th and 8th grade, that's where we dive into the photography and the videography. Now, we don't have drama as part of our academic curriculum, but we do offer drama as an after-school activity, kind of much the same way that we do with our sport activities as well. So if a student wants to participate in a fall play or a spring production, they're more than welcome to do that. We'll give them all the details in much the same way we do with athletics, but they can catch up after school with whoever's leading that. That's where they do the tryouts and whatnot, whether it's in this building or in another building. We communicate that with them. All right. We still have study skills in 5th through 8th grade. It's basically considered a study hall. It's an opportunity for them to catch up and keep up. So study hall still exists. In terms of study skills, that's where we're starting to, I expect all of the teachers to incorporate that as part of their curriculum. That's what we're doing in 5th grade. So there is not a class per se that's dedicated to that, but study skills are kind of woven in much the same way that biblical integration is woven into their curriculum. Okay? And then in terms of help classes, we're in a unique environment right now because of COVID, where I'm asking the teachers to open their classrooms a little early. So right now our classrooms are actually opening at 7:30, and students have the ability to come in and pop into some of those homeroom classes and stay in there rather than gathering in the hallways and whatnot. But then after school, they have an opportunity to speak with their teachers. The teachers have their calendar posted, whether it's outside or inside their classroom. They have their calendar posted, which clearly communicates what their availability might be in terms of helping them out in anything that they need help in. 3 to 3:30 is typically what time that takes place. Now, let me add to this. Obviously, we do have teachers that provide tutoring, and if that can be arranged, we're happy to help with that as well, if that's necessary. But I wanted to say one word about homework before I go on any further. Homework is practice, and that's the expectation. Homework is not busy work. It's not a ton of worksheets. that need to just be heaped upon them so that we can get a lot of minor grades. That's not what it should be. It should be practice to help refine a skill that will allow them to build on that and move on to the next skill. So we're going to talk, and we're going to have some frequently asked question time for us to chat, but just know that in advance, and I'm sure the teachers will communicate that as well. So I'm getting ready to ask Cheryl to come up. She's going to lead us off. She's going to kick us off in terms of our fifth grade history and language arts. But let me say a couple things about classroom expectations, course grading, and communication. Classroom expectations are pretty much standard throughout North Cobb Christian School. There's not a lot of variance. Kids need to be respectful, they need to come to class prepared, and then they need to act appropriately in that class. Very rarely do we ever have students that get sent to the office for anything. But we do have high standards of expectation in terms of behavior and whatnot. We just, like I said, we navigate the mess of life together. So when that's necessary, then we've got great people that can help them with that. Course grading, I'll just say that major assignments, intermediate assignments, and minor assignments, as they're listed up here, you can take a look at that. Major would be tests, intermediate would be kind of quizzes, and then minor assignments would be homeworks and whatnot. I'm sure that we'll probably continue to refine our course grading system as we move along. I'm really excited again about having Chip here, because I think that some of the knowledge base that he brings to this will allow us to examine what are we doing well and what do we need to tweak. And so I'm super excited about that. The communication that we have via email, expect communications on a regular basis from Cheryl, our grade chair. That's one of the things that Cheryl brings to the table. Just as an explanation, in the middle school we have two groups of leadership. We've got grade chairs and department heads. Okay, so a grade chair will basically be responsible for communicating minute details about daily ongoings in that particular grade level, whereas the department chair will be specific to that particular subject area. And we work with them a lot on horizontal alignment and vertical alignment, making sure that 5th, 6th, 7th math is where it needs to be, or 4th, 5th, 6th. A lot of times we'll come down into a lower division. So that's basically an explanation of those two leadership groups, grade chairs and department heads. And then also with regard to communication, Google Classroom is where everything happens in middle school. Maybe you've been introduced to that in the lower school to a certain extent, but that is where your kiddos will go to for all things that are relative to that particular subject area. Okay, now you say, Mr. Konchak, how can we have access to that? And basically the way that we give you access is by giving the kids their username and password. You can get in there under their username and password, and you can take a look at any time to find out what they need. As we get closer to next school year, I think what we're going to do is provide a video tutorial that'll help you guys to navigate Google Classroom so that you kind of know the wheres and whats of that. Is that cool? Hall calendar is really a classroom calendar now. Cheryl posts that in her classroom, and that makes sure that there isn't an overwhelming amount of tests on any particular day. Okay, that's what the test calendar does. It kind of keeps everybody in the know in terms of teachers and students about what's going on that week. And then in Facts, that's where you guys find all the grades that are posted. That's something that you all have access to get in there to see those grades. All right, without any further ado, I'm going to let Cheryl, will you give her a warm welcome? She's got to come from around the back of the corner.
Well, that was kind. Thank you. I am Cheryl Lawler, and I teach language arts and history. Before I begin talking about subject matter, a couple of things come to mind that I want to share with you. First of all, if you have questions that are not answered today or things that you think about later, please feel free to email me at clawler@ncchristian.org. That's clawler@ncchristian.org. I would be glad to answer your questions. I also tell my students, email me. And I have had many email me this year, which is fantastic to me because they're taking responsibility. I've taught 5th grade in lower school, and I've taught 5th grade in middle school. And I have to tell you that I really like it in middle school I do. I feel like fifth graders are ready for a bit of a change. I feel like they are also ready for the opportunities, extra opportunities that they get in being in middle school. So I would be glad to discuss, chat with you about anything that you're wondering about. I also want to say this, middle school boot camp. It is a win-win, win-win. Students are excited about, I could tell that when we met them on Shadow Day. And by the way, they're just adorable. I just love it at the beginning of the year. I think, oh, they're just so adorable. I just love this age. That's why I've been teaching this group this age for so long. But middle school boot camp is like a week before the teachers come back in the summer. And it's led by middle school teachers. And Carol Coleman, who is one of my good friends and just such a blessing to our school, amen? And so that really helps them to see it's not as scary as they may think it is. You know, they really can get from one class to the next in 5 minutes. And they get their schedule beforehand, and they get to pick out their locker, or Mrs. Pietmeyer picks out their locker, but still they get to know what their locker number is, and that's a big deal, because they come the first day of school feeling like, I know where I'm going, you know? So I just wanted to say those two things up front because I thought those were important. So I teach language arts, and it's continuation of some of what they're doing in 4th grade, and that we have a grammar workbook, we have vocab, we do novel studies, and so I want you to know it's a continuation. I'm very aware of the state standards. I'm also very aware of where I want them to be as far as their writing ability before they go to 6th grade. So I keep all of that in mind. The units rotate though. Like we may have a grammar unit where we're reading a book on poetry. And then we go to a writing unit. And then we go to a novel unit where we're all reading the same novel. In fact, today we start a new novel, Esperanza Rising. So that's how language arts goes. It's the assessments, 1 or 2 quizzes, a unit, a test or project. Writing projects are not always major grades, but they are either intermediate or major grades depending upon the length of the writing. So we have about 10 units throughout the year. And then in history, I have the grand privilege of introducing them in some ways to ancient civilizations that they may have heard about, but are not, haven't had that type of history yet. So it's really an early history of the world. And we just finished ancient Israel, and now we're studying the Greeks, the ancient Greeks. So they find this to be fascinating, and I'm glad that much of it, especially when we studied ancient Israel, had to do with Bible, what they're learning in Bible. And so I just love the connection that there is with those two subjects, history and Bible. Of course, I also, since I'm a language arts teacher, I'll tell them, your answer needs to be in a complete sentence. And we also do some writing in history too, nonfiction type writing, so. All right. Okay, so, you want to? Okay, Margie Land, what a blessing to 5th grade. She is such a joy and such an encouragement to our students, but I don't want to steal any of her thunder as far as what she teaches, so I'll let her tell you.
Hello parents, I'm Margie Land. I'm the 5th grade Bible teacher. And I also echo everything that Cheryl Lawler shared. I'm telling you, your child next year, they're gonna love middle school. Our goal, or at least my goal for them in 5th grade Bible, I want them to love their Bible class so much that even when they're in high school, and I did talk to one of my parents this morning, and that I taught her daughter in 5th grade. And I want them to look back on that 5th grade year and say how much they loved 5th grade. But I want them specifically to say, my Bible class, I learned so much because I also was hiding God's word in my heart. Let's look, right now I want you to know that this textbook right here, the Bible that they will be bringing every day to class, is so important. I know we do use the English Standard Version, and they do that in the lower schools. So actually they should already have their textbook for a Bible because they can bring their lower school Bible with them to middle school. But when they bring their Bible, I want them to fall in love with God's Word. That's really my goal for them this year, is to fall in love with God's Word. Because when they get to upper middle school and high school, college, they will want to pull the verses that they've memorized way back there in 5th grade, in 6th grade, middle school, 7th and 8th. They will pull those verses into their lives, especially when they go through some really challenging times. In high school, college, and even through their 20s and 30s as adults. We all need right here to follow God's word, to fall in love with God's word so much that we know this is where we find all our answers. So I want to mention this too. When they have their Bible with them next year, they've got to remember one thing: bring it every day to class. Because this is our textbook. Mrs. Land does make a Bible check every week. And it's a surprise day. Could be Tuesday, could be Thursday, could be Friday. But I do a Bible check to be sure they have their Bible with them. Okay? So remember to be sure that they have their Bible with them. And, you know, I understand if they can't find it occasionally, like if they've left it in their car that morning or they've left it in their bedroom at home. We understand that. So, you know, we do give them grace. We do give them a lot of grace. So, but remember, be sure when they go out the door in the morning, be sure to ask them if they've got their Bible. I don't give a lot of homework, but I do give them homework if they have not finished an assignment that day in class. It becomes homework, okay? So just check, just ask them, do you have any Bible homework? And they'll say, oh yeah, I finished. And be sure to ask them, but did you finish all the work in class today? And then, you know, let them, they'll tell you the truth. They'll say, oh, you know, I need to work a little bit more, okay? Or maybe they did finish, and that's great, then they don't have homework. But I try not to load them up too much with homework, especially on the weekends. No homework, okay? We do have, like I said, Bible verses test every other week, and it's 2 verses. So it's like having a verse a week. In our Bible verses test, sometimes it's fill in the blank, sometimes they just write it all out, okay? But we review it, and we review it, and we review it. So I'm telling you, by the time we have our Bible verses test, which our next one is tomorrow, they know it. They should know it, okay? So really tonight, all they have to do is review it because they've already got it memorized. We have been memorizing Psalms 139. So if you're familiar with that chapter, that's what these boys and girls are learning and memorizing. Right now, we're on verses 17 and 18. and they are hiding these words in their heart. They will be able to pull up these verses now when they're in high school and college, and even as young adults, okay? This year, I teach all the Old Testament. We teach, you know, about all these wonderful, awesome patriarchs, Abraham, Moses, and then we also, after March, April and May, we'll talk about Elijah, and we'll be talking about Daniel, great, you know, men of the Bible, men of faith. This month, starting today, actually we start today, and we will go through the middle of March. We are starting our brand new unit on covenant. Now, it is a 4-week unit, but it is a powerful unit because we're going to talk about the definition of covenant and have they ever used covenant in their life? Have they ever made a covenant with God? So we're looking forward to covenant that we start actually this morning, today. So again, I'm looking forward to next year. I feel like I've already known several of your children because I've taught the siblings, and now I get to enjoy, you know, the family again. So I'm looking forward to that. Thank you again.
I don't have to use the stairs, so that's a good thing. So my name is Zach Edwards. So I'm from South Carolina. I like to move around too, so it's going to be tough for me to stand here. I majored in oceanography and marine biology at the University of South Carolina. And I'm certified through the state of Georgia in biology 6th to 12th grade. I used to teach high school biology at a different school. And I'm certified K through 12 in health and physical education. So one thing, obviously, I'm most of the time your child's first male teacher. Now, not PE necessarily, but their first male. So there's a big difference, as you could tell, between Mrs. Lawler, Miss Land, and myself. Quite a different dynamic. I'm a little taller, look a little different, got a little different voice, and all those things. But I want you to know, I do coach varsity football as well. So there is kind of a stereotype that I believe that coaches fight, and that we kind of don't know what we're doing. And different things like that as far as it goes in the classroom. And I want you to know that is not the case at all. One thing that Mr. Konchak brought up that's very important, and before I touch on what I teach and what I go over, I really try to, particularly the boys, but I really try to teach them life lessons. We all do, Mrs. Land and Miss Lawler, but I believe that's, other than math and science, they may forget that one day, but they'll remember a lesson I taught them about life. And Mr. Konchak talked on it earlier, and I'll never forget Mrs. Moore, my senior English teacher. And she just believed in me, and she kept encouraging me and all those things. And I love that woman to this day. And she was actually the toughest teacher I've ever had. But I really try to instill them and not only be an extension of your household, but instill lessons that my father taught me. And that's with the boys and with the girls as well, on what they should want when they look for a man eventually down the road, and a man of Christ and a man of faith, and the boys of how they should act and be gentlemen. And it's still okay to hold doors, you know, and it's still okay to stand up when a woman enters the room and different things like that. One thing I believe it's important of is we teach them how to fail. We teach them how to fail because, in my opinion, there's a difference between failure and failing. Failure is when you accept that you're doing poorly and you're okay with that. Failing equals growth. We all fail every day. I tell them all the time, I fail every day as a husband and a father, a teacher, a coach, but you learn from it and you grow. And so that's one of the biggest things. You know, the first test we have of the year is a review. This is talking about math, over everything they learned in 4th grade. And there's some kids that fail that test, and, you know, they get upset. But that's an opportunity that I utilize to talk to them and say, look, you know, you're not always going to make A's. You're not always going to make B's, and that's okay. The purpose of this is that you learn from it. Now, you may be scared because when you get in the car, your parents are going to get on you. And that happened to me. I failed numerous tests and quizzes, and I'm still alive talking to you today. I was grounded numerous times, and it's okay. But it's a perfect opportunity for us as teachers, because we're with your kids more than you are. during the school year. And I just want you to know that all three of us are an extension of your household, and particularly me as a man. I try to offset the non-nurturing attitude or look that men have by body language and tone of voice. They know when I raise my voice a little bit, it's not like I yell, but I'll sternly talk, and they, I don't have any problem. They'll sit there and they'll listen and all those different things. But I want you to know it is a privilege and honor to teach your kids because you put a lot of responsibility on us, and we don't take that lightly, so I want to thank you for that. So the first thing we're going to talk about is science. I told your kids in 4th grade Shadow Day that I like science way more than math, and that's, I always try to be honest with your kids. That's one thing. I respect them, and I show them honesty at all points, and I try to incorporate my life. They know about my wife and my 2 little boys and different things like that. But so our science is a consumable textbook, so that means that they won't take notes in class. Everything is done in their textbook. So they write in their textbook, they draw in their textbook, they do everything there. So they should never, unless they're just doing it separately, they should never take notes on a sheet of paper unless, again, they want to. Everything can be written down in their book. Homework, there's not too much homework in science. It roughly is 1 to 2 times a week. I'd say 1. Science is where we do a lot of projects. You know how it is. I mean, math is math. Science, you can kind of get more hands-on and do different projects. A lot of the projects we have right now, we're learning about cells, and so we're doing a project. Most of the time, we do it in class, so I don't let them take the project home. I want them to learn to ask me questions if they don't understand something. I want them to gain the knowledge that Mr. Konchak was talking about the abstract thinking, and ask me why. Why does this organelle do this? Why does it do that? And it allows them to do that when they're home or when they're here with me. Plus, I'm the one that knows the answers to the questions they have, most likely. Particularly in math, we'll do some in-class projects in math that are test grades. And I don't let them bring it home because I'm the one that knows what I'm looking for on the project. And plus, let's be honest, I want them to do it themselves too. I want them to learn the material. And it doesn't help if they go home and some of the work isn't done by them. I'm not saying that happens, but I'm just saying I want them to understand the material. I want them to understand that material by themselves, and I'm just being honest with you. We have, like I said, we have major tests, but often we'll offset those. I don't believe in giving a test for every unit. I also believe in projects. So like I said, this project we're working on this week, it'll be due tomorrow, a cell analogy project. So they basically learned a few organelles of the animal and plant cell, and they have to make a comparison to something. So I gave the example of a factory. They could do a house, a school, an airport, whatever they choose to do, as long as it makes sense, the comparison. And again, they're in class, so they can ask me. And I give them a week, 5 full days to work on these things that count as tests so that they can ask me any questions they need to ask me. So that's pretty much science. There's 8 units. It says approximately 7. I added a unit last year with Miss McMullen. She's our science head. Her permission, and that's over marine biology. They love, that's at the end of the year. That's that's my expertise. That's what I know, and they love that material, learning about the fish and whales and different things of the ocean and things like that. In science, we learn life science. So again, we're learning about the cell right now. We know Earth, so we learn about earthquakes and volcanoes and different things. And we also learn about the atom and protons, neutrons, electrons. So it covers, 5th grade science is just a dip in every single science that you could possibly think of. And then when they get to 6th grade, they'll start honing in on a certain science and go from there. In math, so it says progress in mathematics 5 or 6. That's because advanced math uses a 6th grade textbook. Okay, homework is approximately 3 times a week. I'm not a big homework guy. And what I mean by that is I give them class time to do it. Sometimes I'm not able to do that, but I really don't want, I hated homework growing up, and I told them that. It made me not like school. So I try to offset that, and I want them to enjoy school. And so I try to give them class time, plenty of class time, at least 10 to 15 minutes to work on homework. And like he says, there's 10 to 15 problems is what they'll get. I don't give 20. I think that's crazy. The way I grade homework, there's 2 ways I grade homework, okay? The first way I grade homework is a completion grade. So basically, if I just teach a kid a lesson, okay, over greatest common factor, that's one thing we're going over now, there's no way, in my opinion, that tomorrow, if I grade their homework, I'm going to grade them for right or wrong, because they may get all of them wrong, and they just learned the lesson, and that's not fair to me. So I may do a completion. Did you at least attempt the material? And if they do, they get 100. Now, once we've been in a lesson for a while and I know they should understand the material, then I will grade for right or wrong. So if we have 10 problems, it's 10 points each and different things like that. When it comes to tests, I'm very particular on tests. I do not like to take off full points for every question. So I use little descriptions at the bottom. So if you see, whenever you get your child, and I'll reiterate this when I meet you again, but if you see MC, that means they missed the concept of the problem and I only took off half points. If they do wrong addition or multiplication, division, subtraction, I only take off 1/4 of a point. And it, you know, it's not necessarily out of 5, so it's not necessarily you know, a number. Like the other day I graded a test, it was 0.625, was 1/4 of a point. But I write down what they did. So math tests take a little longer to grade because I go through all of their arithmetic and try to give them everything they can. So like it says, 1 to 2 quizzes a unit. It's mainly 2 quizzes a unit, and then we have 1 test. Again, in math, it's kind of hard to do a project with math and grade that, so we have 1 test every unit. Like it says, 8 to 10 units for the entire year. Basically, throughout the year, what we cover, we'll start off reviewing their summer math packet. That's very important that they do that. For some, it's required. For some, it's not. It's very important that they do that because that covers everything they learned in 4th grade. And I spend a week going over every single individual problem from that summer math packet. And then that summer math packet is that first test that I was telling you that some kids, the problem is that they're learning to study for math. Math is not just I look at it and I think I know it. You have to practice math. You know, I may have been good at football, but if I didn't practice it, I could know all about it, but I would go out on the field and totally blow it. And so they really are learning how to study for math now. And then one helpful hint is students need to know their multiplication facts. That is huge. Even right now, we just learned divisibility rules because we're going over how to simplify fractions. And if they don't know those multiplication facts, when we come to factoring, it's going to take them a lot longer to do that. And at the beginning of the year, I give some grace on, I'll let them work through the break. There's a 5-minute break between classes. Sometimes I'll give 10 to 15 minutes more if I know I can cut into science class. But other than that, you know, the expectation is they finish the test or the quiz during the class time. And if they don't, sometimes if it's a special situation, I'll allow them more. Sometimes, again, that goes with the learning of failing. You know, you didn't know the material as well as you thought you did, and so that just shows you need to study a little more, or more importantly, ask me questions on everything. And then advanced math. So basically, we take their class average from 4th grade. The selection for advanced math is myself, our math department head is our 8th grade English teacher, Mrs. Wright, and Mr. Konchak. And we meet when they get in 5th grade. Some kids, if the grade is really bad, will be moved out of advanced math during that first semester and moved into general math second semester. That has not happened so far. This is my 2nd year at this school. That has not happened. We wait until the end of the year to address that. And then when they go into 6th grade, the advanced math student who didn't maintain an A average will be put into general math for 6th grade. Again, there are certain situations, you know how that goes in life. But we took the class grade average for 4th grade. We don't use the Terra Nova anymore. We use the Iowa Test of Basic Skills, so we'll utilize that this year. We take that in end of April, beginning of May, so we use those results. They will have a math assessment over the 4th grade mastery skills, and then again, teacher recommendation. So the 4th grade teachers, we meet, Mr. Konchak was talking about vertical alignment. We meet with the 4th grade teachers every so often and talk about you know, students that are struggling, and math is mainly the big issue. Students that are struggling in math, students that are accelerating in math, and then we try to match and pull all the data we can. So just know if your child is put in advanced math, we've done a lot of research on your child. If they're not, we've done a lot of research on your child and determined what is the best way for them to succeed. And sometimes that's not in advanced math. And major differences, the pace. So we go a lot faster in advanced math. They're expected to pick up the material more. Now, that obviously doesn't mean earlier this year the kids struggled learning multiplication and division of decimals. It's my job to make sure they understand that. So I didn't move on with my lesson. I made sure, and I did a whole week's worth of review on it again and gave them a test. and allowed them to make up the answers that they missed. I didn't allow them to make up the whole test, but just the answers that they missed. And the grades went up dramatically. And so I know they've mastered the material. If there's one or two students that are struggling, they're expected to ask me for help. You can email me, you know, and we basically make an appointment because I do have morning car line and I do coach football in the afternoons. And so those days we make an appointment and your child is there and I help your child with that stuff. The project activities, again, there are some things we won't do in general math that we do in advanced math. And again, that's strictly because the expectations for advanced math are a little higher. And then the additional content, for instance, we learned about place value. So you'll remember this when we first start 5th grade, we learned about place value to the billions in general math. We learned to the trillions in advanced math. So that's just an example of different things. And so again, my name is Zach Edwards. I try to be honest with your children. I try to be honest with you. I try to communicate. I like to be direct in my communication, just so if you have a question, I just answer you directly. I don't beat around the bush. I'm not really like that. So if my emails seem short or whatever, it's not in anything. I just really try to answer your question or really try to tell you the issue going on so you can get an understanding and can ask me for different questions. I thank you for the opportunity next year, hopefully to teach your children, and thank you for entrusting them to me. So thank you.
All right, awesome. So thank you, Zach. Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, we've got a pretty dynamic team. I'm very proud of them. At this point, we're going to kind of transition into middle school fun facts. Giving him a chance to step out. Extremely proud of Zach Edwards. You don't know this, and I don't mean to belabor it, but his father is dying of brain cancer. And for him to get up on stage and just to exist and do what he does on a daily basis is a special thing. And I think it's a testament. It really is a testament to our people. If you were to ask me today, Mr. Konchak, what's your greatest competitive advantage over other schools and other situations? I'm going to tell you, if you haven't already figured this out, it's our people. And they're amazing. And very proud of just the growth that we've seen in all of them. Moving right into it, middle school fun facts. I'm going to let Aaron come up and share a little bit about student development. So come on up, sir. And just hit it right there and I'll scroll you right there.
All right. I think I have like 2 minutes or something. I met with your students last week, and I did 3 classes. They were 40 minutes long. I don't have 40 minutes, so I've got to do this very quickly and go through all the things. You know, my title is Director of Student Development. There are so many things under that umbrella. I know probably the first word that many of you think of is discipline. And here's one of the things I always tell your students, you know, tell me what discipline is. And they're like, oh, it's punishments, this, that. And what I do is I put my hand up on the screen and I take out the, you know, it says discipline, and I just show the part where it says disciple. That's the ultimate goal. It's to help make disciples, followers of Christ, of your students. And that's what the Lord does with us. His discipline is to make us disciples, followers of Christ. And we'll kind of mention that when we get into Pathways as well, what the Pathways program is. But, you know, sometimes we've got several different types of parents. I think it's fun to share this. We got some parents that, you know, their child gets in trouble and they're like, oh, you're picking on my kid. You know, not really. I mean, trust me, that's the part of my job I don't really like doing that much. It's what I have to do. It's not what I want to do. I'd rather be focusing on things like chapel and dodgeball tournaments and things like that. That's where I'd rather focus on, but we have to do it. There's some parents that are like, you know, hey, could you punish my kid more? I promise you, it's happened. Like, I was willing to show grace. Like, oh, you know, we'll just give them attention. Could you please give them a Saturday detention? I know what they're like at home. All right? And so, and you know what? We've accommodated them on that. We're like, okay, if you want your kid to be here for Saturday school, that's fine. We'll do that. And there are some parents who are like, hey, Mr. Williams, it's a partnership. We understand. We trust you. All right? That's where we'd like everyone to be, is like, hey, we're a partnership. And the ultimate goal is not to make a record of how many detentions we can do, or, you know, how many times I can be in my office or Mr. Konchak's office or Ms. Nichols' office. You know, it's to help disciple them and help them to face their choices and understand. Mr. Konchak says this all the time. Middle school is like navigating the rivers of life. And we're trying to help them navigate around those rocks, all right? And there's rocks in the water. And so we want to help them understand that we do this from a biblical perspective. Probably one of my favorite verses, and Miss Nickel knows this. She's been in many times where I've had to deal with a student, and she's in there with me. I love pulling out Ephesians 4:32. This is like the second theme verse for middle school on the discipline side. Be kind. Well, if we could just stop there. Be kind. Right? They're middle schools. Be kind to one another. Tender-hearted. I tell kids all the time. There's the kind, that's how you treat people. Tender-hearted means, hey, you put yourself in their shoes. Right? Jesus came to this earth, yes, to die on the cross, but also came to this earth to live life as God, but as a human as well. So he could understand, when we come to the Father, we have an advocate that understands where we've been. Put yourself in their shoes. How did they feel when you treated them that way? And then the third part is forgiving one another. So many times, this happens all the time. 5th and 6th grade especially, we're dealing with a situation, a little drama, Way back in 3rd grade, they said this to me. Okay. 3rd grade, did you hear what you just said? 3rd grade. Let's let that go, let's forgive, and we're now in middle school. So that's kind of one of our theme verses, Ephesians 4:32, be kind to one another, tenderhearted, forgiving one another, even as God, for Christ's sake, hath forgiven us. So we want to help them become better followers of Christ. And that's really what we're doing on the discipline side of things. But man, there's so many more other things that we do. All right, in student life, student development, chapels. We have chapel one day a week. We just 2 weeks ago we had Spiritual Emphasis Week. We had a guest speaker come down from Brentwood, Tennessee, Brentwood Academy, Ryan Berger. He talked about a brand new you, and it's about how do we live out this Christian life. All right, and last week we had advisory groups. You'll meet once a week with your advisory group, and we kind of reinforce that. And then at the beginning of every school year, we have the retreat. By the way, you can ask all your kids this because I did it in 40 minutes with them, so we get a lot more detail. But we do the retreat at the beginning of the year. That's kind of to start the year out right on a spiritual level. And we do so many other things with the students to help them to grow and develop. One of the other things that's really, really, really important that we do is the Pathways program. And that actually will be on Fridays in Bible class. And so each year we kind of focus on a different area. In 5th grade, they'll focus on biblical character. And they have lessons that they do. And then toward the end of the school year, we also do some assessments. And in 6th grade, they're going to focus on their unique abilities and their learning mode, their learning style. In 7th grade, they're going to focus on their spiritual gifts. And then in 8th grade, they're going to focus on team roles and leadership style. And it's really cool because it's just like its name says, it's about their pathway in life. And even on the discipline side of things, life's got lots of curves. It's got hills and it's got valleys. And even on the discipline side of things, our goal is, it's not to punish students, it's to help them to stay on the right path. And, we've got boundaries, we've got guardrails. And, I asked the students, hey, what happens if you were to, on a curvy road, you were to go off the road? They were all like, oh man, you go off the cliff. And what happened then? Oh, you would die. No, you're not going to die. Okay, that's not the point. But the point is, you're not going to die, okay? Not literally. But, hey, that guardrail there is to keep you on the road. All right? Now, what angle you hit the guardrail will determine, how bad the crash is, right? If you just kind of, graze it, it's not going to be so bad. Now, if you go head first into it, then it's going to be a little bit harder for you. And some people are that way, man. They just they get their car aimed, to the cliff. We don't want them to do that, right? And so Pathways kind of goes along with that. We do that in Bible class. Myself, Miss Nickel will come in and we'll do the assessments. You can look at the questions there, how they're building their character, what's the best way for them to learn, what are they really good at? And here's the point of it, all right? It's to help give them direction in life. When you think about the highway, the interstate, as you're driving, you see all these road signs. And sometimes you don't know what exit you need to get off at. You kind of know what direction maybe you're going, north, south, east, west, but what exit do you need to get off? And I shared this with the students. I remember I got saved October 29th, 1979. I was 5. And I remember when I was 7 or 8, I responded to the verse Isaiah, "Hear my Lord, send me." And I remember when I was a junior in high school, I said, "Lord, I know that you are calling me to work with teenagers. And then when I got to college, I changed my major from Bible to history education because I really love history. I felt like that's what God was calling me to do. And then when I finished my graduate degree in history education, I still didn't go into teaching right away. It took me a little bit to get there. But I remember the first day I came home from teaching, August of 2004. When I came home, I said, this is what you have me to do. Now, maybe my journey would have been a little bit different if I had gone through a Pathways program where, I had assessments and I had curriculum that was helping me to find out what God had uniquely equipped me to do. I took some of these assessments myself the first year I did this job. It was amazing. When I did the Career Key and the Strength Finder test online, it said teacher, administrator, it said car auctioneer. Now, if you don't know me, I love cars, okay? Now, if I had had that tool in my hand, maybe my journey would have been a little bit different. And maybe, we have to think about God's calling, God's sovereign in our life. But man, maybe I would have had a little bit more assurance of what God was doing in my life. So that's really what the Pathways program is about. It's helping the students see how God has uniquely equipped them, how He's given them gifts and talents and spiritual gifts, and that God can use them. And hopefully, they're going down the right path and they know what exit God wants them to get to at least. Right? It may be down the road, right? But that's kind of our goal with Pathways. It's a great program. I'd be more than happy. Any questions you guys might have, I've got to jet to my class here in just a couple minutes. But, feel free. If you see me in the hallway, you see me out in Carline, you see me out and about, or if you want to email me, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions about Pathways or anything else that has to do with student life and student development.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. This is you, Miss Carrie.
Okay, so I'm told that I need to speak really quickly. It's going to be hard for me not to walk around. What you most need to know is that I am here to partner with you. Some of you may be more concerned about your child's stress level going into middle school than you are about their grades. And I feel like everything here falls under my umbrella of above and beyond what's on this slide. And this is kind of funny. It's a side note that has nothing to do with counseling. When Mr. Edwards was saying how important it is that your kid knows their math facts. As a parent, I recommend if you're writing something down, Dr. DeMaio, I think it's D-E-M-A-I-O, has all these videos on YouTube that are really fun where you can sing about multiplication. Sorry, I got on a tangent there. Another thing I want to say, Aaron, Mr. Williams and I do partner a lot. What we hope is that if the kids are struggling, which they all do, I tell the kids there's nothing wrong with seeing the counselor ever because everybody in middle school has a problem, and that's middle school. We all are growing together. The idea is for them to work with me before they get to a point where they need discipline. And there are times that Mr. Williams and I see kids together, and the idea is just to develop their character, to, above all else, guard their hearts. So we want to work with them on what they're struggling with in their heart. We worked with a kid the other day who had said something really unkind to a girl, and instead of him having a silent lunch, the purpose was for him to develop character. So it was all about him finding a way to be kind to that student and grow in character rather than have a punishment. And this is why my daughter's at this school. The student, when he was thinking through what he had said, I told him that the student's eyes, when she was telling me what he had said and how it hurt her, that her eyes had filled with tears, and she put her head down and said, "What hurts so much is this school's supposed to be about God." And that touched his heart, and he put his head down, and his eyes filled with tears. And that's what this school is all about. It's about transforming the character of a child, and that's why I'm here with my student. I don't know if I have time to talk about any of this.
We'll give them I'm going to give them a quick overview and
Okay.
Q&A. You can do that.
Okay.
Okay?
All right, so I am Miss Nickel. I am passionate about serving your child, and I'm so excited that they'll be with me next year.
Appreciate that. Thank you, ma'am. One of the most important facets of our program in middle school is the fact that here comes the opportunity to start having these kind of conversations with them. Remember whose you are. Do you all know who Janelle Roop is? For those of you that are in this room and those of you that are at home that are watching, Janelle Roop is a registered nurse who has come to North Cobb Christian. She actually is an upper school teacher now, but she served us for, goodness, 3 years. And she created a sex respect curriculum called Remember Who You Are. And this biblically based, scientifically accurate curriculum is age appropriate and it's gender separated for 5th through 8th grade. It used to be that we taught this, when I first got here, we were just teaching this in 8th grade. And let me tell you, this is a conversation that we probably need to be having to some extent in lower school. And I can tell you that it's just a tremendous program. And we send a lot of communication about this program through Flight Plan and even educational videos for parents. We want to give you guys the opportunity to have that first conversation. We want to give you guys the opportunity to have that first contact, specific to some of the talks and some of the things that we're dealing with now. There is so much more projection of information that's inappropriate for kids at such an early age that we need to give you the tools that you need, and we need to give them the tools that they need to have that filter. Remember we talked about the filter through which they can see this world and make good choices. So super excited about Remember Who You Are. You'll hear more about that as you approach that in 5th grade. But Janelle Roop is the teacher of that course, and she does awesome things. So in the end, North Cobb Christian is action leading to valued outcomes. When I was coming up through my degree at Liberty University, my first degree, I saw this statement up on one of my youth pastors had written this up on the board, and it said, "My greatest fear is not failure, but to succeed at something that doesn't matter." And that changed my life. That helped me I know what God was calling me to. My greatest fear is not failure, but succeeding in something that doesn't matter. And that's what it is. That's what the middle school journey is. It's an ebb and flow. It's relationships. It's navigating personalities. That was funny because I had a psychology professor. His name was Philip Captain, and he wrote a book called The Alpha Omega Process. And you have the Erikson psychosocial theory, right? And you have Freud's psychosexual theory. Well, he wrote the psychospiritual theory. And that was he was known for, Dr. Philip Captain. And he said this quote, "Your quality of life is going to be dependent on your ability to adapt to other people's personalities." Think about that. Your quality of life, and you're a college student getting ready to face the world, right? Your quality of life is going to be dependent on your ability to adapt to other people's personalities. If there's anything I want you to hear from me today, as it relates to, before we dive into the Q&A, about the middle school, it comes back to the heart of the issue. We're here to guard hearts. And if we can help them to see the world through that biblical lens that we talked about, then we're going to be better for it. I kind of feel like the word discipline was used a lot today. There is not a lot of discipline at North Cobb Christian School, to the extent that it's not done in a way that helps it. What Carrie mentioned was with that young man and that young lady in that interaction. It's not that student didn't receive a consequence. The consequence was, before you apologize to her, for this whole week, we want you to build and establish a relationship by saying things that are kind. So then she'd be ready and willing to hear that apology. Does that make sense? And I think so often, we're so quick to say, I'm sorry, our own kids, right, to us. I'm sorry, Dad, I'm sorry, Mom, but no, are you really? That's the key. And so that's how we navigate this together. So I want to say right off the bat, thank you guys for coming. Those of you guys that are online, that are watching us right now, is Matthew, are you up there? So what we're going to do is we're going to jump into the Q&A. And if you get any questions from anybody online that specifically wants to participate in this next however many minutes we go, don't hesitate to just let me know that there's a question, and then we'll present that to the group and answer it. If you guys need to leave for any reason right now, you feel like you're satisfied with what you've heard and you have any other, and you don't want to stay around for the Q&A because you can't, then by all means, you're more than welcome to exit at this time. But if not, if not, we're gonna move right into the next section. All right. So what we've done is, first of all, and it was said earlier by Zach, and I appreciate him saying that, the kids had an awesome, did your kids have a good time when they came in? Yes?
Yes.
All right, fantastic. So we want it to be fun, but we want it to be meaningful, and we want it to be helpful. And so one of the things that we did was we allowed students to present questions in advance. And we had last year's fourth graders answer those questions. And so that's basically what I did, is I introduced the middle school, and I had a panel up front, and we just kind of navigated the different questions that we had. Questions about switching classes. Will my students survive switching classes? Everybody has survived so far. Everybody survived. And can I tell you how much I love being where we are at now? If you can think, and maybe you're aware of this and maybe you aren't, depending on what your previous middle school experience has been, middle school is all upstairs now for the most part. I mean, in terms of core classes, we're all upstairs. The only class that isn't, that's a core class that's not upstairs is out in the science building. And what we've done there is amazing. Rather than having 3 small classes where the kids kind of are navigating for 6th grade life science, 7th grade earth science, and 8th grade physics, basically what our physical science, we've got a bigger classroom developed. We had a maker space that was transformed into a classroom for our 7th grade earth science class. So, but because Zach teaches 5th grade science and 5th grade math, they're not going to have to go out into the science building unless we're doing a lab. They'll stay inside the classroom for that. Okay, just FYI. But yeah, there's not been any issues with them navigating, and they do get the 5 minutes that was allotted to them. And that's, you know what, that's enough time for them to come all the way down here if necessary. So just so you know. How much homework will there be? There may be more time for quizzes, to study for quizzes or tests. If you were participating this online or watching in this room, you may think, wow, they don't give homework in middle school. Not true. There's plenty of homework, but we do give them the opportunity to finish that in class. So I feel like, first of all, I think that homework should be a partnership. And I mean that by saying this. I don't mean that parents should be doing homework for their kids. And I have to tell you a funny story. I had a student that was working on a homework assignment in one of his classes. All of a sudden he freaks out and goes, oh my goodness. And I walk over to his desk and I look, and all of a sudden this ghost is coming into his Google Doc, and it was actually filling it out. And I said, who is this? I typed on his computer. I took his computer. I said, who is this? And she said, it's Mom. To which I said, this is Mr. Konchak. Thank you. I think it'd be a good idea for him to finish this assignment. So it was a chuckle moment, and I knew that person, so I was really well, so I don't feel too guilty about that interaction. But but I can tell you that that we want homework to, like I said, it needs to be practiced, and so I think that you'll find that they're going to have more than enough time to get that done while they're in school. How do the students get to fine arts classes? So we ask them to stay in their, continue to maintain. We've got the walking lanes that go throughout our parking lot. We ask them to cover those. A lot of times administrators will walk out there and make sure that they continue to, every now and then, just to make sure that they're not cutting through parking spaces and everything. That's what I'm most fearful about from time to time, is just in between classes them walking across the parking lot. But they all do that together, and we've got security on campus that a lot of times will monitor that as well. So that's how that works. Do students use computers in class? So we started a one-to-one program about, goodness gracious, I want to say about 4 years ago now. I think it was my 2nd year we started this one-to-one program. So we're a Google platform school, Google Docs, Google Slides, Google Sheets, etc. 5th graders didn't used to take their computers home. They would just keep them in school in the lockers that we have for those laptops. But what we've decided, absolutely after COVID hit, we knew that they needed to have their devices. So, and they were able to take them home and bring them back and not break them, and it was a beautiful thing. So we're one-to-one. I think that helps in terms of security. Can I say this about security? we've had students, we have a resource called Securely that's on all of the computers, that if a student looks up material or something that could be harmful to them, I get an alert, and as do the counselors of every division, depending on what division that student is in. They get an alert specific to what that student is looking up. And can I tell you that I have made several phone calls and received the most wonderful responses from parents for that service. Just because of, I mean, I know it kind of has that big brother feel to it, but it's not. It's something that they realize, wow, that is huge. Thank you very much. That gives us a heads up, and we're nipping things early. Does that make sense in terms of how we're helping them to navigate life? So just FYI on that. Phones are a big deal for whatever reason in middle school. And I think it's just because there's the gamut. There's those that have had a phone since birth, and there's those that won't get a phone till after they graduate from high school. But I can tell you that our policy on phones is pretty straightforward. You can have a phone, you can bring it to school, you must keep your phone in your locker. That policy is subject to change. Right now, the way it works in upper school is they have like phone holders or slipper holders that they'll put the phones in, the upper schoolers will, in there. And one of the things that we're thinking about maybe proceeding in that same direction, but we're not there yet. So for now, they need to keep it in their lockers. And if they get caught with their phone, the first time it's a warning, the second time they have to turn it into the middle school office, and then the third time, mom and dad, you got to come in and take the phone. So it's just a way for us to manage, being on the phone unnecessarily. Will she be contacted if needed? If the student doesn't have, they can always use the middle school office to make phone calls home, and anytime that they want to reach out to you guys, so they're more than welcome to do that. How can they manage being in sports so big difference between lower and middle is the fact that we're offering athletics. I know that we offer some club sports in lower school, but for the most part, they're really getting hit in middle school with opportunities for sports. We have fall sports, winter sports, spring sports. In the fall, we've got volleyball, softball, football. In the winter, we've got wrestling, which I highly recommend. I just think it's great in terms of grit, building that grit. But we've got wrestling and we've got basketball, and I think swimming comes in the spring. But then we have in the spring track and field and soccer and baseball. So a lot of different opportunities. Next year we're looking at lacrosse. So there's a possibility that we'll bring lacrosse in for the middle school. We already have it as a varsity sport this year. They have a varsity schedule. So now we're building that feeder program. And excited about that. Teachers communicate about homework to parents. I mentioned Google Classroom before and how you can get in there through your student. That will help to make sure that they're knocking out their respective assignments. And actually, we have two questions there with regard to that. Teachers direct students to the board in their classroom. I already mentioned the test and the quiz calendar, and basically communication is key. We communicate via flight plan. We communicate via emails from teachers. We communicate via emails from me. We communicate to the students anything classroom related through Google Classroom. So let me say that again. We communicate anything that's classroom or subject related. That comes through Google Classroom. Anything that's grade related will come through the FACS program. Does that make sense? That's basic. What's the resource that you guys use in lower school with all the pictures and stuff? Seesaw. So the Seesaw program doesn't exist in middle school, and parents are going through withdrawals already. I can see you guys sweating right now. But what we do is we do post a lot of that stuff online. They're constantly asking us in the development office to send them, in the marketing office to send them the images for the different things that we've participated in a particular class. So a lot of experience, a lot of hands-on interaction. So we want to give you guys an opportunity to see what that looks like. All right, receiving graded papers. They're given back to students when all have completed a particular assignment. We're careful about that because, as you know, sometimes we have students that like to pass their assignments on to others. That doesn't happen at North Cobb Christian, right? On certain occasions it happens, so that's one of the ways that we ensure that everybody's finished the assignment and then that's passed back. If If it's being belabored because a student is out a week or however long, then we, of course, we'll jump on that and get that out as quickly as possible. These folders are for every subject or every particular subject, and they will have a list of materials that the students need. The beginning of the year, Ms. Pietmeyer posts online a list that has all of the requirements of a student in that particular subject area. So you can know before the school year even starts what kind of resources, what their needs may be. I post a syllabus online. The syllabus that I post actually includes a syllabus for that you'll have access to, is a syllabus for every class in 5th through 8th grade, and it's digital, so you're not fumbling through a lot of paper. You can just click on a link, and that link will take you to that particular class, that particular subject, and you'll know all the odds and ends in terms of expectations in that syllabus. Okay? In terms of communicating after class, if we're starting to see signs that we need to hook up with a student because maybe they're getting back, but they're not turning their homeworks in on time, or they're just falling behind a little bit, then obviously there's going to be good communication between that teacher and that student. If that is happening on a regular basis, there's going to be good communication between that teacher and you. But we have to stay on top of that. I will say to you, please don't ever hesitate to email any of the teachers. Don't expect that there's going to be a response. If you send an email on a Friday at 4 o'clock, don't expect that there's going to be a response that same day. It might not get that response until that following Monday. Some teachers are different, and some of them will feel free to respond to you same day or even over the weekend. That is not an expectation that I have. I give them the opportunity to go into their weekend and do what it is that they need to do to get prepared for the next week. But I will say this, a lot can get lost in translation via email. Will you agree with me on that? So I do encourage my teachers, if there's anything that's sensitive, to make a phone call versus an email. I think we live in a society where it's easier to email, and I get that, but sometimes you can't hear the passion, and you can't hear you might get a skewed view. You may present a skewed view, or you might receive a skewed view via email. So we ask them to have that conversations in person. Teachers are available for conferences at any time. If you want to set those up, you can call the middle school office, and we'll set those conferences up for you, or you can email them directly and set up a conference. We've had a lot of video conferences this year, just because we don't do as many in-house, obviously, right now because of COVID, but we were able to do that. All of their supplies, every student gets a locker. In the past, they used to get a top and a bottom locker. Now that we've moved upstairs, everybody has a top locker. We've got shelving up there for them to keep their bags and athletic equipment and all that gear that they may bring, band equipment or orchestra equipment. All of that is there as well. Expectations in the classroom, we've already gone through. What happens if an assignment is late? Each syllabus clearly communicates what the assignment, what the penalty is for an assignment being late. So just know this, that across the grade level, all the expectations are the same. So you won't have one expectation from a math teacher and then a different expectation for the science teacher, etc. Actually, that'll never happen because that's the same person. But in this case, math or history or Bible, anything like that. How can I be involved in the middle school with my student? So we want parents to participate in as much as is possible. What I will tell you right now is the COVID environment that we live in right now, it's kept us from doing a lot of what we've done in the past. As a matter of fact, I sent an email home this past week communicating that we weren't going to do a spring term trip for 7th and 8th grade because of this, this COVID mess. So hopefully this will die down by next school year, and we'll be able to get back on track with that. For 5th and 6th grade, relative to spring term, typically they do a one-day trip. Last year they went to the zoo. I think this year they were going to the aquarium or vice versa. And sometimes we'll do the Atlanta Aquarium, and sometimes we'll go to Chattanooga and do theirs. So it's just there are different opportunities that are local that we'll take them on, and sometimes those are community service opportunities. Okay? What after-school opportunities are offered to middle school students who don't participate in athletics or the arts? For 5th and 6th grade, we do offer the Flipside program. or I should say, Wendy in the lower school offers the Flipside program for any of those students that would like to take advantage of that, or families that would like to take advantage of that. Okay? So I feel like I've been talking a long time. That's the last slide that I have for you guys relative to frequently asked questions, but that may not be the last question. Anybody asked a question online, or is there any questions currently? All right, let me give you guys an opportunity. Is there anything that you feel like I haven't covered, or that we haven't covered specific to the middle school adventure? Yes, ma'am.
I just have one question. So when they change, are they gonna have like, say, their homeroom class, and then when they change classes, do the kids, is it mixed up, or are they with the same kids all day?
So there's 3 different teachers, so that would mean there's 3 different classes. So that would mean that there's 3 different paths that they're going to be on specific to that. So there isn't a homeroom per se, where they start in that homeroom and then they go to different locations. Wherever they go first period will be their homeroom. And it just depends on what, because of the rotation and creating a schedule, first of all, let me say that's probably one of the most challenging things about creating a schedule for 5th grade in particular, is that we've got 2 classes, 1 class, and 2 classes. So once they get into a schedule, most of the time they're going to stay with those students throughout their schedule.
Right, but so like right now, they're in a class with the same 15 kids all day. Will that get mixed up? They'll get their schedule, but will it necessarily be with the same kids?
Where
all
that can
day?
mix up is with regard to their specials.
Okay.
Remember, there's those 3 specials that we talked about in addition to the study halls and whatnot. So if you're saying, are they just going to see those 15 kids all day and that's the only kids? No, they'll be able to mix that up. If they're in orchestra, they'll go to orchestra if that's their choice, or if they're band, they go to band, or they go to a visual art. Not to mention lunch and PE or recess, so plenty of time for them to mix it up.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, in regards to the sports,
Yes.
are those divided like an A-B team? How does that work for a 5th grader?
Okay, that's a good question. Typically, a 5th grader in sports, they will have an opportunity. Not too many 5th graders are going to jump right into like a tackle football scenario. Let's use football as an example.
That's what I was curious about.
So like that would be basically a flag football scenario.
Okay.
It's what we call flag tackle.
Okay, so it's staying that way for the...
My understanding is,
Okay.
I haven't heard otherwise.
Okay.
Sometimes on the athletic side, I'm the last one to get any information,
Okay.
but I will say that 5th and 6th grade would be together in that. We have had some 6th graders who are skilled enough and big enough to participate in like a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade full tackle. So, good question.
Thank you.
Awesome. I really appreciate your patience. You guys have hung in there with us, and hopefully this has been content rich for you. Any other questions online up there? Nothing at this time? Okay. Can you guys think of anything else that, yes ma'am?
Just to make sure, are we gonna need to provide the Chromebooks, or is that?
No, that's something that we will provide for you. The Chromebooks are provided by us, and we do the maintenance on those as well. Now, if it's a situation that a student has a Chromebook that they've dropped or that they've damaged themselves, obviously there will be a charge that's associated with that, and Gina does a good job of communicating with you guys, or making sure that the tech office communicates with you guys, or that's placed on your bill. But no, that's something that we're doing. We're continuing to offer that service in middle school. And for the foreseeable future, we have conversations about that every year, about what's the best way to serve the one-to-one program. I appreciate what Mr. Williams said about pathways. I don't know if you guys truly have a grasp of how awesome that program is. 5th grade is character, 6th grade is identity, 7th grade is leadership, 8th grade is teamwork. And the curriculum, the assessments, and the actual activities that we do. Like this year, we are going to try and offer a 7th and 8th grade leadership adventure, where they can apply the things that they've learned through their Pathways program. In addition to that, there's a portfolio that gets put together that has self-reflections as well as teacher reflections, or their advisor group. Okay, I don't know that was mentioned very much, but advisor groups is something that's big in middle school. It's like a small group. So if we have a chapel message on Thursday, and then the following week we have an advisor group, it will basically be a small group to break down the content that we got in that chapel message. It's just really a neat way to help kids to process some of that. That was really awesome that we just did this past week, and that was after Spiritual Emphasis Week, which was a big deal. So, good.
Are parents ever given the opportunity to look at the pathways?
Yes, ma'am. Throughout the process, at any time, you can ask to set up a meeting with myself or Mr. Williams or with Carrie to sit down and take a look at what that Pathways folder looks like so far. That's the cool thing about, you know, I can measure academic ability, right? I can measure athletic ability, but how do you measure spiritual maturity and growth that way? So I will tell you, there are some parents that call for those meetings and they want to take a look at their child's folder, and they'll go into that folder and they'll see, wow, not a lot of content, not a lot of meaningful content there. Well, that's because Susie or Johnny or whoever it may be it hasn't been applying themselves or just been as extensive. Maybe they're not as vocal or verbal or in terms of writing some of those details down. But then there's others that'll blow you away. So it's just, you know, it's a process. And it's just one of the ways that we can record that. But then that folder will move on with them all the way up through from 5th grade. And so you guys will receive the benefits of a full Pathways program versus a partial. Do you see what I'm saying? Because we're starting in 5th grade. So that's kind of cool. And then that follows them up through upper school. That folder doesn't continue to be filled out through upper school, but it's got the content in it that will give helpful information to those teachers in upper school. They'll have access to that. Good question. Thank you. Great. You guys have been awesome. I'm going to hang around and answer any additional questions that you all might have. Thank you for spending your morning with us. And we look forward to having your kiddos.
Thank you.
All right. You got it. You're very welcome. Take care.
Thank you.